Okay, so I am going to talk very briefly about a number of different things that are really important to your experience as a F-1 or J-1 visa holder while you are studying at the University of Notre Dame. And I want to um, make sure that you get the high notes because, again, I know you're very
Hello.
busy. You have many things to do. You can just make sure that you keep uh,
Hello.
your microphone on mute, please. We have a few more people jumping in. And give them 2 seconds to jump in. And for now, I'll just mute everybody. So if you have a question, put it in the chat. And I will get to it probably at some point in the presentation, but we will have time at the end of the presentation while we are doing the F1 or J1 registration process to make sure that you are able to ask your question if you have it. So the first thing I want to talk about is understanding your documents. And I know that all of you have now entered the US. You know what documents you had with you, but I want you to understand the distinctions of them because they're really important for your time at the university and understanding your status. And I'm going to talk a lot about your immigration status because that is the main responsibility of my office. And I work with the International Student and Scholar Affairs Office. I'm the director, and my name is Leah Zimmer. My name is probably on some of your I-20s, or it will be in the future. And my team is not here with you tonight because they have been going full blast for weeks to welcome new students. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. So when I talk about understanding your documents, there's a few documents. So most of you on the call actually have a Form I-20. And the Form I-20 is what allows you to be legally present in the US. And it's important that it is accurate and up to date when there are any changes. So we have a lot of undergraduates on the call, and some of you might change your major while you're at the university, and that's fantastic. Definitely explore all of your options while you're an undergrad, but it's important for you as an F-1 visa holder that your major on the I-20 always matches your major at the university. For my graduate students and my Mendoza business students or law students, your major will probably stay the same for your entire program. But on page 1 of your I-20, it will say what your education level is, it will say what your major is, and it will also very importantly say what your program dates are. So most of your program dates should be a start date of sometime this August, and then you have a variety of program end dates. So from your program start date to your program end date, you are legally present in the US. Once you complete your program and you are getting ready to graduate, there's a way to extend your status by applying for work authorization. And we'll talk about that more when you get closer to that graduation date. But these dates determine your legal presence in the US. This form determines your legal presence. If you are a J-1 visa holder, then you have a DS 2019. And that's going to be also have some of the same information, and it's really important that you pay attention to the information that is accurate. So one thing that is really tricky is that at the top of the I-20, it says in huge letters, F-1 visa. And so students often think that the I-20 is actually their F-1 visa, but in fact, the F-1 visa is a stamp in your passport unless you are a Canadian or Bahamian citizen, in which case you are automatically granted that F-1 status when you enter with an I-20. It's really important that for the duration of your program, so when we go back to your I-20, you have these program start and end dates. For the duration of your program here, and for any work authorization after graduation, that you are always entering an F-1 or J-1 status. Many of you probably have an ISSA or a B or B1, B2 visa in your passport, and you should not use that while you are studying in the US as a student. You can use it after you finish your program in the future if it's still valid, but while you are enrolled at the university, while you are participating in work authorization, you should always enter an F-1 or J-1 status. Your visa can expire while you're in the US. We have students who are in the US for 8 or 9 years. with an expired visa because their program dates on the Form I-20 have remained valid. So these dates are much more important than the dates on your visa. The date on your visa, that expiration date, just means that you cannot enter the US after the date listed on your visa. Most of you have a 4 or 5 year visa, so you can continue to come in and out because under entries, where you see this M is circled, it says M, and that means that you can enter multiple times for the duration of your program at the university. But once you hit the expiration date on the visa, you can no longer use this visa to enter. So this document is about legal entry. Your I-20 or DS 2019 is about legal presence. The third thing to know is that you cannot apply for a US visa while you are in the US. And that is because this visa does not mean anything if you are not at the port of entry. The only thing this declares is that you are eligible to enter the US. And once you are in, it doesn't really matter. This document, your I-20, is what's most important. The third document that we want to make sure you understand is the admission stamp that the Custom and Border Patrol officer will give you at the port of entry. So this will not happen every time. If you went through Miami, if you went through Houston, the CBP officers there often don't give the stamps. They just don't want to. But if they stamp your passport, you want to check and make sure that it says the date that you entered and that they have written F-1 and DS. And that DS means duration of status as it's defined on your I-20 or DS 2019. So this admission stamp is important, but not everyone will get it. If you do get it, check to make sure that it's accurate. So we're going to move then to the I-94 record that everybody will have access to. And at the end of today's call, we are going to have you look up your I-94 record if you haven't done it already. This will become essential when you try to apply for a social security number. It will become essential when you try and apply for work authorization after graduation. There's just some different places where it's going to show up. And so you always want to make sure that when you have exited the US and re-entered, that you check for your most recent travel record. And it's very simple. You just Google I-94 record, put in your passport information, and it's going to bring up a record that looks like what you see on the screen right now. You'll have an I-94 number. It's going to say what was your class of admission. It should say F-1 or J-1. And that's one of those things. If you have a B visa and you go up and they look at your B visa and enter your B visa, that's going to impact your ability to study and to work in the US. So it's really important that you check to make sure it says F1 and that you have this DS here. If there is a date listed, that means you have to exit the US by that date. So if you were ever given a date, you want to stop by the ISSA office in the main building so we can help you sort that out. But this I-94 record is a part of making sure that you legally entered so that you are considered legally present in the US. So when you travel outside of the US, every single time you exit the US and re-enter, it is a brand new entry. Just because the CBP officer lets you enter the last time or 10 times in a row does not mean you are guaranteed entry. There's no way to guarantee entry. And that's why we tell you it's really important to understand these documents and your status, because we can't stand with you at the port of entry. We can't go with you to the consulate if you need a new visa in the future. It's really between you and the US government. And so every time you travel outside the US, you're going to need that passport that's valid 6 months into the future. You'll want your valid F-1 or J-1 visa stamp in the passport, again, unless you're from Canada or the Bahamas. And you will need a travel signature on that Form I-20 or DS 2019. So if you look at page 2 of your I-20, there should be a section that says travel endorsement. And most of you do not yet have a travel endorsement. For those of you with the Form DS 2019, it's in the bottom right-hand corner of your document. When you get ready to exit the US, you want to check that. If you need a travel signature, I'll tell you at the end of the call that you can go to ISSA link and request it. You can come by our office during walk-in hours for us to provide that travel signature, but you will need it to re-enter. And they're typically good for 1 year after we have signed it. If you're traveling within the US, you're an F-1, J-1 status the entire time that you are present in the U.S. If you are traveling away from South Bend, we want you to take your passport and at least, the very least, a copy of your I-20 or DS 2019. That I-20 is really only determining that you were legally present. They won't ask for it at the airport if you were flying within the U.S., but they can ask you for documentation. The CBP officers can, the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers can ask you to prove that you are legally present. And we have never had a student who was asked, but because they are allowed to ask you, we want you to be aware of that while you're traveling, especially when you're flying. You're also going to need your passport or a U.S. driver's license to board any plane. Your home country ID is probably not going to work in most cases. So, to maintain your status, the first thing you want to understand are these documents that are really determining your immigration status. And that means that it's determining your F-1 status, determining your J-1 status, and your status is why are you in the U.S. and how long will you be here for? And in both cases, you should be considered legally present. So your status is determined by your I-20, by your visa stamp, by that admission stamp or I-94 record. And it's also managed by your SEVIS record, which is the record that my office assists you with, and it's how we report to the government that you are here and you are doing what you said you would do. That is really important. When we email you and say we're going to terminate your SEVIS record, what we mean is we will terminate the record that allowed us to give you the I-20. So it cancels your SEVIS record, it cancels your I-20, and you have to leave the U.S. if you have to do that. It's really important that you're aware of these different documents and records that establish your immigration status, and that you understand a different government agency in the U.S. Has oversight over each one of these things. They don't always talk very well together, and so it's our responsibility in our office to help you navigate that, even as it's your responsibility to ensure that you understand and that you're keeping your documents and records accurate. If you lose your status, this will impact your ability to work in the U.S. It will impact your ability to be removed at any time if you lose your status or you violate it. And it could make it really difficult to return to the U.S. in the future. And that doesn't mean just coming back as an F-1 student. That can impact your ability to get a visitor visa and come and visit friends or family or just be a tourist in the U.S. in the future if you violate your status now. And so I'll say it again at the end, but we really want you to communicate with us when things might impact your immigration status, so we can talk through it with you. So a few other things to know about maintaining your status. And again, for those of you who joined us a little bit later, please be sure to put your questions in the chat and we will answer those. I'll answer those at the end of the presentation. So maintaining your status, what are the things that could impact your ability to maintain your status? The first thing is enrollment. You must be enrolled full-time for the entirety of your program at the university. So undergraduate students, that means that you have to have a minimum of 12 credits every semester that you are studying. Most of our undergraduates do 18, 19, 20 credits, and that's totally fine. What's really important is that you never drop below 12. That is a university policy, so it's pretty easy to maintain that, but just know you do not have any option to drop below that, especially for your first three years here. For our graduate and professional students, you are going to need to be enrolled in 9 credits each semester to be considered enrolled full-time. And those 9 credits and those 12 credits are a part of maintaining your F-1 or J-1 status. On Monday, roll call ended. All of you should have completed roll call, but we were going to complete roll call every single semester. And that is important for the university to confirm that you are here and enrolled in your classes. But for F-1 and J-1 visa holders, it's also really essential for maintaining your status, because that's how we learn that you are on campus, you're enrolled in classes, at least 12 or 9 credits, and that you are ready to go for the semester. So roll call every time. I will say that our graduate and professional students, you tend to have the hardest time remembering roll call and to complete it because you are doing good research and you are studying and you're in collaboration with your PIs, We just want to say, make sure every semester, the beginning of the semester, you complete roll call. It is essential to you maintaining your status. The second way that you are going to maintain your status is by reporting an accurate address whenever it changes. And so tonight is part of the F-1 registration process. If you haven't already, you're going to report your current address. And if that changes, you are required to report that to us within 10 days of any move, of any change. For those of you in the residence halls or in an apartment building, even if you change the room that you live in the same building, or you change apartment numbers, you need to report that to us. And this is, of course, because the U.S. government wants to know where you are, and it's one of our responsibilities to keep that up to date. But if you do not do this, it is a violation of your status. Every semester, you will have an opportunity to update your address and roll call. Otherwise, you can do it in Inside ND. There's an option to view and correct your address and change it there. If you're really concerned about making sure it gets to our office, you can always email us the corrections into your address. But again, second thing, maintaining your status is address. The third thing for maintaining your status is considering on-campus employment. So all F-1 students are allowed to work on campus, and you do not need any authorization from our office. You can work up to 20 hours per week during the fall and spring semesters. You can be a TA, you can work at Starbucks as a barista, you can work in the dining hall, you can work in a lab somewhere, you can tutor on campus. There's so many things that you can do while you're working on campus and while you're studying at the university. What's really important is that you do not exceed 20 hours unless we're on a fall break or winter break, and that you are ensuring that you are being paid by the University of Notre Dame and that the employment is serving the Notre Dame community. J-1 students, you do need authorization from our office for any employment, and you should have gotten an email about that yesterday reminding you how to report it. You have the same 20-hour limit. So F-1 students, J-1 students, you are permitted to work on campus. F-1 students, you do not need authorization, but there are limits to how many hours you can work. J-1 students, you do need authorization for on-campus employment. So we'll move to off-campus employment because this is probably the #1 reason that students lose or violate their status. You are coming to Notre Dame to get an excellent degree, an excellent education, so that you have many opportunities after graduation to work in the U.S., to engage with amazing companies, amazing alum, but you have to, as an F-1 or J-1 student, have authorization from our office or USCIS before you begin working in any off-campus employment in order to not violate your status. For F-1 students, there's 2 different kinds of work authorization. One is curricular practical training, or CPT, and that is what you will participate in before you graduate. It's something that's connected to your major, connected to your classes, might be a required internship as a part of your program, or you're enrolled in an internship course as a part of your program. Each college for our undergraduate students has different requirements and different eligibility steps that you would need to achieve to sign up for CPT. For our graduate students, often that will look like a research dissertation or an internship class when you're registering for classes. But curricular practical training is connected to coursework directly. It can only be done while you are an enrolled student at the university, and you must be enrolled for 1 full academic year before you are eligible to apply for CPT. That requirement is the same for OPT. And optional practical training is what most of you will use to access employment in the U.S. after graduation. And every F-1 student who completes their program and graduates is eligible for 12 months of work authorization, called OPT, after graduation. Those of you who have a STEM designated major are then allowed to apply for an additional 24 months of work authorization, also same OPT. It's just really essential that you hear me now. Absolutely no work off campus is allowed if you are not authorized by our office or by USCIS. And that authorization is printed on your I-20. So if you have an I-20 that does not have any work authorization on it, you are not eligible to work off campus. And it doesn't often matter if it's unpaid or paid. If it's related to your major and you have an opportunity to do 10 hours off campus, I would say check in with our office, because we don't want you to violate your status. We don't want to have to terminate you because you started working for a company without getting that authorization. J-1 students, very similar. It's called academic training, and you can apply for that as you near the end of your program or during your program. It's the same kind of authorization for your program. Again, don't work off campus without obtaining authorization. Reach out to us. Some other times to reach out to us or consider your status. If you encounter any problems that would impact your ability to continue your program, it could be your health. It could be that there's a family emergency back home and you have to get home. I talked to a student just today who just got here and is now going to have to go back home to help his family. That is totally fine, and we want to help support you through that, as will all of your partners on campus. But if you encounter a problem that's going to impact your ability to continue at the university, contact us so we can help you think through your options and what you need to consider because of your immigration status in the U.S. If you're suspended or dismissed, please reach out to us so we can talk through kind of your options. If you're going to take a leave of absence, if you're going to finish early, or you need a little bit of extra time at the end of your program, and any time an off-campus or remote work opportunity comes up, reach out to our office. You can come in for walk-in hours. We have virtual advising appointments. You can email us. All of these things, it's really essential that you are considering your immigration status when you're making these kinds of decisions. So our office is really here to help you manage your status, but ultimately it is your status. And again, you're the only one that can go up to CBP and approach the port of entry, the only one that can go to the consulate. You're the one submitting an application to USCIS for work authorization. And we can assist you and provide some information about that process to help ease the way, but ultimately it's your application, your petition, your arrival. We report to the U.S. government and to different agencies, but we are not employed by the U.S. government. We're really here to help you and to support you, and whatever that looks like, even if the support is, I'm sorry, you can't do that, or I'm sorry, there's a limitation there. We want to make sure that you're clear on the questions that you have about your immigration status. The final thought on this section is our office is the only one that should be advising you on your status. I had a very lovely freshman tell me 2 weeks ago that he really knew what was going on because his brother had been a student here before, and he pretty much understood his status. And even if your brother or sister is here, I would say do not go to them for immigration advice. Their situation may always be different from yours, and they may not understand how that difference could impact the answer we give them versus we give you. So if you have questions about working in the U.S., if you have questions about your status, about travel, about getting signatures, about anything with your status, please reach out to our office and connect with us so that we can help you. So a few things just to let you know, in order to help you maintain your status, I mentioned walk-in hours. Monday through Wednesday, 2 to 4, our offices are just open in 105 main building for students to pop in and say hi, ask your question, sit down with us a little bit, bring your documents, and we'll walk you through what you need to help with. Advising appointments on Thursdays and Fridays are virtual. You can make those appointments from our website. We have various information sessions. We will probably have a Social Security number information session next week because that's a big question this time of year. And then lastly, we have ISSA Link. And ISSA Link is our online portal where you can request documents and report changes. So for those undergraduates who might do study abroad in your junior year, this is the place that you'll come to report that so we can note that on your immigration record. If you lose your I-20 or you need an I-20 with a travel signature, you can request an I-20 here, and we will print that off, send you a digital copy, and you'll have what you need to move forward. Those of you who are being paid by the university or plan to get an on-campus job and will need a Social Security number, you can see there's a Social Security number letter request form here that we'll help you with. and a bunch of other things here that you can use. Again, this is how you will report changes to us and move forward on some of those tasks that are important to your time here. You will get an ISSA updates from us, and I will say you will get hundreds of emails. Undergrads, you might have signed up for 100 club emails when you were at the activities fair last week. Those are all amazing. We do try to keep our email very specific to immigration status questions and concerns, and occasionally what are the cross-cultural opportunities happening across campus. But we want to keep them hyper-focused on the information that you need to maintain your status. A few things just randomly that students often have a lot of questions about. The first is about taxes, and every student on this call will have to file a tax document next spring. And even if you are not paid any money, even if you have no job this fall, every student who is here in the US in 2021 will have to file a tax document in spring of 2022. We have two programs on campus that can assist you with this, the Tax Assistance Program and an online tax preparation service called SpringTax. Either one of those will be available to you, and we will tell you more about that in February when it comes time to file your taxes. Just remember, you're going to have to do it. And if you've been in the U.S. before, you might consider, did you file the appropriate tax documents from your previous stay? For Social Security numbers, these are only available to individuals who are paid by a U.S. institution. And you are only eligible if you're getting, at this point, money directly from the University of Notre Dame into your bank account. And that's the only time you can apply for that Social Security number. This might complicate things like getting a phone or setting up a bank account. They're not impossible tasks, but it's definitely more difficult. If you are going to be applying for a Indiana driver's license, you might think that you need a Social Security number, but if you're not being paid, you are not eligible for one, and instead you'll get a letter of ineligibility that you can take to the DMV to apply for that driver's license. You are going to need a letter from your employer. We have a template on our website. You'll see a link to that when we send you your registration email. You're going to need a letter from our office confirming your status, and you're going to need to fill out the SSN application, have copies of your immigration documents, and like I said, we'll have a session next week that walks through that process a little bit more in detail. But just so you know, there's some things you're going to have to gather for that application. The last thing to know about Social Security numbers is you are not eligible to submit an application until you have completed the F-1 registration process and 14 days have passed since the day that your registration was confirmed. So just be sure that you get that email that says you're registered and before you look to apply for the SSN. The third thing, and I'm seeing lots of questions in the chat, and I will definitely come back to them. The third thing is we really want all of our students to hear us very clearly that no U.S. government agency is going to call you and threaten you over the phone and demand money because something is wrong with your record with the government. We have students about every 4 months who call us and say, I know you told me that no government agency would call me. I know that you told me do not pay any money over the phone, but I just got a phone call and it was so scary and it seemed so real, and I paid them $2,000 or $10,000 or $25,000. And there is no way to get money back when you have sent it and provided it to a scammer, or you've provided your account numbers, or you've wired money. So please hear me on this. No government agency, whether it's a U.S. agency or it's your home country, it is just not going to be a legitimate request if they call you and threaten you and tell you that something is wrong. There is a scam where there's a phone recording that's from the Social Security Administration, in theory, Social Security Administration, and it says, please stay on the line for more information about a possible problem with your Social Security number application, your Social Security number, your identity, your passport information, and they hold you on the line, they finally get on, and then you're involved in this scam. Always hang up when you hear those recordings. They are no good. The last thing I want to say about this is that you are always welcome to just end the call or tell the caller that you need to talk to our office. We have had students who have received calls from their home country consulate here in the US. They Google the number while they're on the phone. They're like, well, this is the number that's calling me. And it's important to remember that these scammers are professionals. They have a lot of tools, and they can make themselves look and sound exactly how they need to get you to feel afraid and scared and pay them money. So please, under no circumstances, it does not matter if they say they are ICE or the FBI or the police or the Social Security Administration or your home country consulate or the police from back home. That is not how anyone is going to contact you to indicate a problem. So our office is in 105 Main Building. We have walk-ins Monday through Wednesday, 2 to 4, and you can also make appointments on Thursdays and Fridays. And I'm going to turn to the chat right after we move to the F-1 registration and J-1 registration process. If you have already submitted the F-1 registration or J-1 registration form, then you have listened to this presentation, then you have done what you need to do for your F-1 status. If you have not submitted the F-1 registration form yet, then we're going to go through that process right now. This is absolutely essential to do in the first couple of weeks of your time at the university so that you can begin your program and continue through. So I'm just going to say that how to go about getting a social security number. I will send out an email by Friday about how to do that. Somebody asked, can F-1 visa holders do freelance work or volunteer? And you can. It's just really important to understand that the volunteer work you are allowed to do as an F-1 visa holder is teaching children how to read, serving at church or a religious service, serving at a food pantry. These kinds of activities that are more for the goodwill of the community, you can absolutely do. If you are volunteering within your field or you are working freelance within your field, you are probably going to need prior authorization to participate in that opportunity. And I would say check in with our office before you begin. CPT and internships. CPT is the authorization that you need to participate in an internship. So internship, you can talk to the career development about different opportunities to do internships, but you cannot do that internship without CPT or OPT. If you were to do that without authorization, it could be a violation of your status, and we might have to terminate your record. If you already have a social security number from a previous visit in the US, then you can of course use that. You always have the same social security number while you are a visitor in the US until you become a citizen. And spouses in F2 status are not eligible for any work authorization, so that's super important to remember. And we're going to move to the registration slide now. So on your computer or on your phone, wherever you are, please go ahead and go to issalink.nd.edu. And I'm going to get everybody started, and then I'll go ahead and allow people to raise their hand and ask questions over the video. But you're going to go to issalink.nd.edu. You're going to click the login button, and you'll have to go through the Notre Dame ISSA login process with your NetID and password. And on that, if you're on your phone, it will be in the top right-hand corner, a menu item, new student registration, and you'll follow that to the form. If you're on your computer, it's going to be on the left-hand side, and you're going to find the menu item, new student registration, and in that form, F1 or J1 new student registration. Even if you have been in the US before as an F1 or J1 student, you're returning from a leave of absence, you still have to complete this process unless you have already filled out the form this month specifically. Once you've submitted that, I would say you want to look up your I-94 record, make sure that that's accurate right now. But once you've submitted that, your responsibilities here are actually complete. And I wish you very well for the semester and your time here. And please feel free to stop by and say hi to us whenever you have a question.